This is the Wikipedia page for Train Sim World, and this is the subsection for Train Sim World 4. And it says the 7th installment in the Train Sim World series. This is, of course, going back to the sort of pre-releases. Officially, it's only number 4, of course. And it was released on the 26th of September 2023, about a year after Train Sim World 3. And it says this version of the game included 3 routes. That included the Antelope Valley line in California, which is not actually part of the Amtrak system. It's actually part of Metrolink. And the East Coast Main Line in Britain. This is the former and current London and North Eastern Railway. From Peterborough to Doncaster. I've ridden that line many, many, many times. And then the S-Bahn Vorarlberg, if I'm pronouncing that right, which is actually in Austria. Between Austria and Germany, really. It's actually a bit confusing because you have parts of it which are in Germany, see, parts of it which are in Switzerland, parts of it which are in Austria, and parts in, supposedly, they're saying Liechtenstein? Yeah, there we go. I guess that makes it interesting. I think this is actually the one I'm going to do the playthrough of. Because if I do the East Coast Main Line, it's just another British route. If I do the Antelope Valley line, I think I'd rather do more American stuff for Train Sim World 5, I think. I think I'm going to hold off on more American stuff. And I think it'll be easier to do the Austrian one. So I'll do that. Also, the deluxe edition, it says, included the Flying Scotsman, meaning the locomotive. And I have that. And the Vectron, which I also have, because I have the deluxe edition. And you can also get a bunch of DLCs, of course, for the Blackpool branches and so on. You can get the Bernina route, Bernina line. I've ridden that too in real life. It's very impressive. One of the most impressive lines I've ever ridden on the Rhaetian Railway. And they also have a Long Island Railroad DLC, which is similar to what was in Train Sim World 2020, and they're mentioning that, actually. Although they're pointing out that this version is actually longer, because it has 15 miles of additional route. We look at the Train Sim World 4 Steam page. They have the different DLCs listed, which actually includes some locomotives. Not all of it is routes. They're saying 104 different DLCs. Let's see what we got here. See if that's true. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, only the featured ones. Okay. Browse. Yeah. That's a fair amount of material. I think maybe I complain about the quantity of DLCs because they don't always have the stuff that I want. Because rail fanning is so big a hobby, there are all kinds of things that can be missing, of course. The Harlem line is there. I might actually buy that eventually. Although that's actually meant for Train Sim World 2, of all things. Harlem line is, of course, the former New York and Harlem. From Grand Central Terminal in New York City to North White Plains. That sounds like it would be really cool to have. I do have it for on trains, actually. And yeah, all kinds of really cool stuff here. Much of it compatible with Train Sim World 2. So if you have a weaker computer, you're not necessarily left out. I guess maybe we'll take a look at what's been changed in the game next. Actually, there is one more thing worth mentioning that's not in Wikipedia. This is a wiki, but it is not Wikipedia. This is the Train Sim World wiki. Stannier Class 8F from the London, Midland and Scottish Railway and later British Railways is included in Train Sim 4 with no DLC required. The catch is, if we look carefully here, if you want to use it in something other than the training center, you need either the Peak Forest Railway or the Spirit of Steam DLC. Or West Somerset Railway or Blackpool branches. So it's basically in the game to train you in steam locomotive operation for the various different DLCs available. Train Sim World is really more about modern trains, but there are DLCs of historic stuff out there, and it includes some steam engines. They're supported, but as a general rule, you don't see them very much, so they decided, I guess, that they needed to add at least training scenarios to Train Sim World 4. So there's a splash screen, and there's a second splash screen for Train Sim World 4 with a bunch of the new trains for it. One thing you notice right away is that there is more music in this version of Train Sim World. And then we have the usual, as I put it, Beavis and Butthead clause. Then we have another splash screen with basically the same scene. And this is the main menu again. Not too different from Train Sim World 3, actually. So, to the trains and Training Center and the Creators Club, this is the store. Most of the best content is on Steam, though. This is very limited by comparison. Some of this might interest me, but mostly I would argue that Steam is a better bet. And you get more sales, even though they're showing a bunch of stuff on sale here. Generally, you get bigger discounts on Steam. And then we have the training menu, including Explore on Foot, which has been lumped into it. I haven't done too many of the training exercises for this specific version. I've done the basic ones. You can choose a route. This is exactly the same, more or less, as the previous version. The training center is there, and a whole bunch of routes that have been updated for Train Sim World 4. The training center is almost the same. The main difference is that the trains for this version, the ones that come without DLCs, are included there. The Flying Scotsman also is, even though it's technically a DLC. It's frequently bundled with Train Sim World 4. So the layout is the same, more or less. So if we go in, you can tell it basically looks the same, except for that the trains parked here are different. A few of them are the same, but most of them are not from Train Sim World 3. So we have the Class 323, that's in training livery. We have the Azuma EMU. We have the Talent, the Austrian variant of the Talent. Then we have the Trainer British Rail Class 66. And then we have the F125. This is an EMD, actually. It looks a lot like an F59 PHI, but it has no lineage to connect it. It just happens to look similar. It's relatively recent. They were made through 2024 for Metrolink, although surprisingly not Amtrak or anybody else. This is a California Metrolink locomotive. I would like to try this one out eventually. It looks really interesting. It's called an F125 because it's one of the first American diesels, probably the first one of all to be completely American, except for in the car body design, which can operate at 125 miles an hour in service. Of course, there's the Siemens Charger, but the Siemens Charger is German in origin. The only foreign origin of this locomotive is that the car body is Spanish. They hired an outside design firm for it. The prime mover is a Caterpillar, but that's not detached from EMD because EMD are partly owned by Caterpillar now. And I find this interesting. I do have some issues with the door design here. It's hard to close it properly. But I'm assuming that's just a simulator thing. That's nothing to do with real life. There is the LMS Stanier 8F, also called the Black 8, even though this one isn't painted black. They use this one for the steam locomotive tutorial, but you need to get DLCs if you're going to drive it somewhere. Unless you create your own scenarios, of course. I've tried it. It's reasonably fun. Although it is awkward to drive after you're used to driving diesels and electrics. And you have to learn how they've implemented the steam controls, which are obviously much more complicated than diesel and electric controls. People often think that because steam locomotives are old, they're therefore simple to operate, but this isn't true at all. They're actually quite complex and quite challenging. I'm trying to get the door shut again here. Maybe this is one of the design flaws in Train Sim World 4, is that it's hard to close doors of trains from the ground. You have to be exactly at the right angle. It's really a pain. Anyway. Moving over here, we have, of course, the Flying Scotsman, the locomotive, not the scheduled service. Here it's been configured as a British Railways A3 class. In reality, it's a hodgepodge of different things from over the years because it's been a heritage locomotive since the early 60s. So they've fiddled with it quite a lot after it was no longer British Railways. And of course, before British Railways, it was London and Northeastern, and before London and Northeastern, it was at least planned by the Great Northern. You do have to board it from the left side at the training center because otherwise it diverts you to the steam tutorial. Something I discovered when fiddling with it. So it's got the AWS, which is prototypical. The driver's seat is on the left side, even though originally it would have been on the right side under Great Northern, because the Great Northern ran on the right, actually. LNER ran on the left. Then there's the GSMR cabinet. And GSMR was not a technology used in the era of British Railways or the LNER, but was introduced about 20 years ago around Europe, repurposing GSM cell phone technology, or simply, as they say, mobile phone technology in European terminology. I actually knew some of the people who worked on it. I helped to teach them English, actually. Here's the Deutsche Bahn Class 185. This is called a Vectron. These are very popular with railway leasing companies, or rolling stock leasing companies. They're also used a little bit for freight, partly because they're so often leased. RegioJet and Flixtrain use them too, because they are used for both passenger and freight service. I'd like to try this one also, but I'm making it somewhat of a secondary priority until somebody makes a Czech track DLC. That's something that Train Sim World currently lacks. Then the window opens, let's see. Kind of a British-style opening window, even though the Vectron was not primarily designed for use in Britain, as far as I know. More of a continental European design. Again, I'm having trouble closing that door there. Struggling and struggling with it here. There we go. Got the right angle. Behind the Flying Scotsman are some, by appearances, early British Railways Mark 1, and possibly these are Mark 2 stock. I think they're Mark 1 though. The trucks or bogies are similar to what were used on the earlier Mark 2 stock for the West Coast Main Line. I think this is a Class 1 coach. British Railways built a bunch of standard equipment right after nationalization, and it included the Mark 1 coaches, the original series of coaches to be used by British Railways. Having to open the window to open the door is authentic, because notice there's no door handle on the inside of a Mark 1 slam door coach. This included the EMUs also that had slam doors at the time. Let's see what else we got out here. I haven't actually explored this yard properly. Yeah, those look like Mark IIs painted to look like Mark Is. I don't know about that. Then, of course, we have the bi-level coaches from Metrolink to go with the F125. And what else have we got? We've got the Azuma there. Over here we have more German stuff. This looks to be the stock that they included for the Dresden map. Dresden is actually a kind of a cool place to watch trains. There is a little bit of vandalism in Dresden, but not as bad as a lot of other parts of Germany. It's very easy to get there from the Czech Republic too, although that line is not included. I wish it were in Train Sim World. A lot of people have proposed it, actually. I've ridden on all of these many, many times. Again, these locomotive sheds are not openable. They're just scenery, which I am disappointed by a little bit. Now, let's see what else we can find here. Oh, there's another 8F sitting in the siding. 8Fs are 280 configuration. In America, they'd be called consolidations, but they don't use that term in Britain. They serve the same purpose, though. They're basically heavy freight locomotives. And the British never really went on to much larger power for freight service, because their freight trains were never as long as the American ones. So here we got more stuff back here. It looks like more Mark I coaches, including, these might actually be a little bit older than Mark Is. Those are in the old so-called blood and custard livery. British Railways introduced the blood and custard livery in 1949 for corridor passenger stock for use across the network. It wasn't region-specific, like the brown and cream you'd see on the western region, for example, or the green on the southern region. It was supposed to be universal, but for corridor stock only, specifically. And then we have another Metrolink train here in its entirety, and we have another complete Azuma. It might be that they want you to have the option of just jumping right on the test track, not having to do the complicated switching of getting the trains parked immediately outside of the classroom building out to the test track. Down here, I don't see very much, but maybe it's just because it's out of range. Let's see what we can find down here. I'm leveled up just for walking, eh? The parkland around the training facility is very extensive, and you can actually get a lot of achievements by putting up missing maps and repairing things and so on. I have walked it a great deal in Train Sim World 3, but not so much in 4 yet. I don't know if they've made any small changes, but this looks incredibly similar to 3, and I suspect they haven't changed very much of the facility. I think most of the changes are in the trains for this. You wouldn't necessarily have to change it around very much. It's a very, very nice fictional training and test facility. So we walk, and I walk, and I walk. There's one of the maps that I've already done a lot of those. There's another Vectron, and there's a new one. A Deutsche, I guess, Bundesbahn 363 class switcher. Those were actually diesel hydraulic locomotives, not diesel electrics, and they were produced from 1956 to 1964. Another training class 66, another Deutsche Bahn class 185, another English, Welsh, and Scottish class 66 that's been heavily weathered. And I don't know, let's see, let's keep looking. That stuff we've already seen. Checking before I move out onto the track. I've been violating a number of safety rules in this exploration. This obviously isn't the way I would move around a real railway yard. The most important rule of being in a railway yard is always assume that a train is coming on any track in any direction at any time. And I've been neglecting that on this fake walk around. They do give you a red circle around your pointer there if you're on the track to warn you, hey, you're on the track. There it is. This is some of the only garbage I've seen simulated. I prefer not to see garbage everywhere on the railroad, even though in Europe lately they have not been handling this very well. It used to be America where you saw all the garbage on the tracks. Now it's kind of... the roles are reversed, along with the graffiti, actually. Though graffiti is kind of a plague everywhere. See, I made a mistake right there. I should have looked back along that track rather than just jumping onto it. That is a safety violation. We got some container flats, and we have some auto carriers loaded up with cars here. And there, I'm following the rules there. I'm looking before I run over. See, this is the way you're actually supposed to do it. Okay, so we have another Class 185 that's unmarked. I'm guessing it's supposed to be a leased unit to add a little bit more realism. We have some empty auto racks. And we have some freight vans of various designs. You can see some containers back there behind them on container flats, so you have loaded container flats also. More freight vans. These have sliding roofs. The roofs just open, if I'm recalling correctly. Unless I'm misidentifying these. Now that I'm looking at these, maybe I'm wrong about that. Hard to tell just looking at them whether they're that design. I think actually I was wrong. These are not the sliding roof type. But you find vans like that in Europe. None of this is American. None of this would be seen in America. Not even the container flats, because the container flats would be well cars in the US, so you can stack 2 containers up for double stack container trains. Okay, let's see what else we got down here. I have found coding infrastructure in Train Sim World to drive these road vehicles, but I haven't found one that's actually drivable yet. All of the road vehicles I've seen have been scenery. Let's see if we can find that container train hidden behind this manifest or mixed train. Mixed freight train. A mixed train would technically have passengers too. You might say, well, this walk is not a realistic speed. It looks like I'm running full speed ahead, but that is because by default your character runs in Train Sim World. If you press the Shift key, they'll slow to a walk, which is the opposite of how this would normally work. So, we have these unusual pink containers here. Looks like we have a 40-footer, I think. If it's a 40-footer. Some more 40s. They look like 20s when I looked at them earlier, but these look to be 40s, actually. I don't know if it's a real shipping company or not. I've never seen that in real life. You're seeing some of the parkland here over on the right. Of course, there are invisible borders on this map, but an awful lot of this territory is easy to explore. So, let's see what else we can find here. Let's go to the main menu. What else is there to explore here? Creators Club? Sounds like the workshop in a different incarnation. So we have a livery designer. We have what looks like the sharing hub equivalent to workshop. We have the formation designer for forming of trains. We have all these undecorated cars of different sorts. Weirdly enough, it looks as if there isn't any painting tool. I'm not sure exactly how this is supposed to work. I guess once you import, you can look up your alternative liveries here, but I'm a little bit puzzled by what I'm looking at here. It's nice to see that it has this infrastructure in it. Yeah, just looking at this doesn't tell you very much. They have a nice selection of amphitheats there. I'm looking desperately for something that I could fiddle with here. Looks like they do have Mark II coaches. I guess I was wrong. I guess there are some Mark II coaches mixed in with the Mark I's. Here are the Mark I's. An area planner. That's kind of a given. That's going to be there. Exit. And we'll try something else. Actually, let's not exit. Let's just do the playthrough. So to the trains, your collection. Choose a route. The Vorarlberg S-Bahn. This is supposed to be Stadtbahn, although this is actually a pretty big system within the Austrian railway system, the OBB. I've done this one already. St. Margrethen is actually in Switzerland, but this route starts in Lustenau there. The map is a little bit hard to read because it doesn't have enough labels on it, but this scenario takes place entirely within Austria, actually, and it's relatively short, so it's ideal for this video. So we'll get started here with the talent. This is actually anything but easy. I thought this was going to be easy and it wasn't. So I'm setting it up here, doing the obvious things. This door switch is counterintuitive. The bottom end of the switch is what you want pointing toward the doors that you're going to open. So if we go back here, we already have most of our passengers, but if we go back to one of the doors, it's open. But I fought with this quite a lot in the beginning because I thought that can't be. And in fact it was. So, let's see. Is there anything else I have to do before I depart? Unusually for Train Sim World, a lot of these switches are not operable in this unit. I have to switch on the CIFA alerter. It's in Germany, and they're saying PZB. But really the term that I'm more familiar with for this system is Inducy. Really they're the same system. I'm thinking about doing a separate video on that, but I'm not sure. The bottom line is that it's a rather difficult system to use. On this recording it was pretty much as finicky as ever. That made it hardest to prepare for this playthrough. I had to do a number of practice runs until I could get the Inducy to cooperate with me again. It takes some doing. So I'm waiting for the departure time. When I depart, I'll click the reverser into forward, and I will use the unified control to apply power, because like a lot of EMUs, that's how it works. It takes a few seconds for the doors to shut, which is realistic. So now, put the reverser in forward, and I apply power. Now, I can only accelerate to 40 kilometers per hour initially because Inducy systems do not allow you to go over 40 kilometers per hour until you've passed the first signal equipped with a trackside inductor, or the sensor. So I have to be very, very careful here. One of the things that appears to be the case, although I could be wrong, is that in Train Sim World they have not implemented any means for resetting the Inducy system after it strands you. Once you're stuck, and you have to start the scenario over. Unless somebody knows of a workaround for that. You can see the lights flashing there, which indicates that the Inducy has not set itself up yet. So I have to stay under 40 kilometers per hour. There's the first signal. And it's set. There goes the CIFA, so I have to acknowledge the CIFA also. But, just as important, I can now accelerate and take the train to Hardfusak, which is the next station stop. I can't actually accelerate all the way to 130k, or at least it's a very bad idea, because the speed limit almost immediately drops to 110 kilometers per hour. So I've gotten out of the habit of trying to go too much faster than that because it gets you into trouble when you start coming up on it. And it doesn't lose you a huge amount of time. Partly it's that the indice signaling system is so finicky, I have to treat it with kid gloves. I'm going 101 kilometers per hour, which is a little bit slow, but I have the little station coming up there, and this station is tiny. You have to really be precise about spotting the train when you pull in, because it's very easy to overshoot it because it's so short. It's clearly designed only for a DMU or EMU. Alright, so apply some brakes. This appears to have blended braking. And for blended braking, it's not hugely grabby. I've not been very impressed by this. I don't know if that's realistic, but in Train Sim World, the talent does not decelerate as fast as you would expect it to, given what it is. That station is zooming up to us, even though we're going less than 50 kilometers per hour at this point. So I'm going to try and pull up and stab the brake. The crude way of doing this, which a well-trained driver would probably be able to avoid. Well, this is actually smoother than I thought it would be. Didn't even have to go to a full service there. So, open the doors and I wait. Browsing around to find something to talk about while I sit here. That phone actually works, incidentally. Calling dispatch in the European way. See that over on the left there. Now, close the doors, or lock the doors as they put it, since they're passenger operated. And the next station stop will be Bregenz Riedenberg. And the indices are already set up, so I don't have to worry so much. But it operates like an indice. Here I'm accelerating a little bit harder because I can get away with it. Got the CIFA there again. The CIFA is relatively simple. It just beeps after a certain time, and if you don't acknowledge it, slams the brakes on. There goes the indice, so I have to acknowledge and pull the speed way down because we're coming up on an 80 km per hour speed restriction. Initially they're telling me to slow down to 85 because that's the fastest restriction that indice can give you other than normal speed. But I'm aiming for 80. I'm actually at 74 here, 73 even. I was debating to myself whether I should push it a little bit more here so that I don't get pressed for time, but I really don't want to fiddle with that signaling system. It's very, very overly sensitive. And as you can see, they're calling it the PZB system here. Again, to reiterate, everything that I've read indicates that PZB or PZB is just a slightly newer term for indice. They're basically the same systems. There are some newer versions of PZB or PZB, but that's another story. All right. So, now I really have to drive slow, because I'm in the speed restriction. And the station's coming up, and one of the advantages of going slow, of course, is that it will be easier to stop. My prediction is that this is going to be sloppy anyway, because I'm out of practice, and I'm paying attention to so many things on this train to keep it running, that my driving is not going to be the smoothest. Alright, it's telling me I'm already in the platform. Almost. Actually, no. When I pass the signal, I'll be. Acknowledge. The indice or PZB. And now I'm going to have to brake much harder this time. Almost a full service. And I'll settle for this. It's close enough, because the platform is relatively long. It'll probably hurt my score a little bit, though. And the indice is back to standby there, so I'm going to have to hold off when I highball. So what are we doing here? Let's see. Lock doors. I'm already running late here. Let's see if we can make up the time. I am not optimistic about making up the time. I think this is going to fail. I'll make it, hopefully. But I'm not going to be impressing anybody. So Bregenz will be the last station on this route. Although not on this map. You can take a much longer trip if you want to than this, but as I said, I wanted a short video. Actually, this isn't even the main line. You noticed a lot of this is single track. This is actually the main line right here that we just got onto, but up to this point, the route was a branch line. And it's starting to snow. And this is maybe the most accurate portrayal of snow I've ever seen in a video game. The only reason I'm running the wiper fast is that it doesn't freeze to the windshield, because it is really that accurate. One of the things that's less accurate is that the leaves are still on the trees in December. That's a little bit off the mark. We are talking about Austria, after all. This is not one of the warmer European countries. Looks like my slower wiper speed there is working out. Maybe I don't have to run them fast. Fisifa again. And I'm waiting for that indice system to unlock so that I can just highball. I can't really go hard, though. This is not the place to highball, because I'm coming up on the Bregenz yard here, and I really don't have any room to do it in. I'm even a little bit hesitant to go too far beyond 40 here. I guess I have to be less late. I will be late, but maybe if I can mitigate it here a little bit. We then go to the other side of that platform. Indice or PZ gives me another warning. I acknowledge it, and this is going to be another stab on the brakes to save time. Or maybe not. Maybe this is actually going to be pretty smooth again. Overestimating how rough it's going to be here. Looks like I'm just off by a little bit there. Okay, so let's see. Open the doors. Shut off the wipers. They won't let you finish the scenario until you do the loading and unloading. In this case, it would be unloading because the train is terminating. Notice the passengers on the platform have umbrellas. That's a new feature for Train Sim World 4. And the snow is accumulating on the windshield very realistically. We'll lock the doors to conclude. And we're out of here. So the score there is quite good for me. We'll check later to see how it ranks with my other scores. So my stop accuracy there is really nothing impressive at all. That's really kind of bad. I just stopped the train within the platform. And if we go back to the main menu, let's take a look at how that run ranks among my runs on that service. I'm curious, actually. It is my record, 3,243 points. That's nice. So I guess this was a success. I guess thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hopefully I'll be doing Train Sim World 5 pretty soon.